Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Texas Diversity Committee event. Today is Holocaust and Heroism Remembrance Day. In 1979, the U.S. Congress designated the Sunday preceding this day through the Sunday following it as the Days of Remembrance of the Victims of the Holocaust. These days are to be used for civic commemorations and special education programs like this. The U.S. military also participates in these commemorations every year.
And this week, so are we. There are two parts to our observance: today's presentation and the participation in the annual reading of the names vigil. That will occur this weekend at Congregation Besa, which is located on Lookout Drive, not far away from here. You'll find the details about the event on the back of that program that's in everybody's seat. Also, you can get credit for attending this event in due course, so you get 1 volunteer hour for attending this.
Okay. The theme for today's event is upstanders, not bystanders. An upstander is someone who stands up for others when he sees them being mistreated. An upstander is not a bystander.
Our guest speaker today will tell us an inspiring story about the people of Albania, what they did when they saw people being persecuted. As you will listen to his story, ask yourself, what would I have done?
What do you do when you see somebody abused or in danger? Are you a bystander or are you an upstander?
What would you do? The people of Albania did something extraordinary. They have taught us that help can come from the least expected place. They have taught us how we should treat each other and how we should protect each other as our countrymen and as human beings.
Dr. Nietzsche is the Executive Director of the Albanian American Cultural Center, a post he has served in since 2010. Professionally, he has owned and operated the Brothers Pizza in McKinney since 2004. He's also the owner and founder of a new startup, Scientis, did I say it right? Which provides unmanned aerial services. Very exciting. It's your turn.
Active in his home community of McKinney, Texas, Doc has donated his time to serve on several community boards, including the Board of Directors of the McKinney Airport Development Corporation and the Board of Directors for Volunteer McKinney. And he served as the Vice Chair of the McKinney Convention Visitors Bureau Board of Directors.
After serving in the U.S. Air Force, Doc graduated from Mountain View College and earned a bachelor's degree in occupational training and development from the University of North Texas, my alma mater. While operating his business, he went on to receive the Nonprofit Management Certificate from the Center of Nonprofit Management in Dallas. He is also a Leadership McKinney graduate.
Please help me welcome Doc.
First, I'd like to thank Earl Bills, Amber Webb, and Susan Wilson, and also the Texas Diversity Committee and Blue Cross and Blue Shield for having me today to discuss the book and the documentary movie, Besa, Muslims Who Saved Jews in World War II. I applaud you and your company for being proactive in such a noble endeavor as to tackle diversity issues head-on and hold discussions and meetings regarding that important topic. Diversity is more relevant today than at any other time since I can remember. My name is Dr. Nietzsche. I've been Executive Director for our local Albanian American community for the past 5 years. I've been a volunteer since 2001. I would like to start by giving you some background on the country of Albania and the Albanian people. Then I'll discuss our local Albanian American community in Dallas-Fort Worth. After, I'll talk to you about the book and the movie, Besa, and take any questions you have regarding this subject and diversity as a whole. So Albania is a small country in Southeast Europe. We have a landmass equivalent to the state of Maryland and a population of 3 million people. Adjacent to Albania is Kosovo. Kosovo was part of the former country Yugoslavia. After the Balkan Wars and breakup of Yugoslavia in the 1990s, Kosovo gained its independence and became a recognized nation. It has a population of 2 million Albanians. Other bordering nations like Montenegro, Macedonia, Greece, and Serbia contain another estimated 2 million Albanians. We have three major religions. Islam is about 60 to 70% of the population, Catholics about 10%, and then Christian Orthodox about another 8 to 10%. The Albanian people are directly descended from an ancient Illyria. The Illyria civilization is one of the oldest known cultures and societies in European history. Albania has many archaeological sites that date back thousands of years and link its history to the ancient Illyrians. During the Cold War, Albania was an extreme communist dictatorship. Now, you have the communist countries like China or Vietnam or Soviet Union, and in those communist systems, they still had some sense of enterprise and maybe some freedoms. Not much, but Albania was more in the line of like a North Korea type of communism where the dictatorship was extreme, and that lasted from the end of World War II all the way up into 1991. And so, I mean, it was a luxury for these people just to have like a bicycle. That's how you knew you had a little bit of prominence in the society. I mean, nobody had cars. There was no consumer products whatsoever. So it was a really hardcore, strict communism. And so Albania was affected in a very adverse way for a long period of time. Yugoslavia was communist as well, but not to the extreme political spectrum of Albania. The end of the Cold War brought an end to the communist regimes in both countries. Albania became a free democracy and has joined the NATO alliance. It is also on path to join the European Union. Yugoslavia broke up and descended into war and chaos. And when the dust settled, Kosovo became an independent nation state and a free democracy. So it's always difficult to explain the Balkans a little bit because, I mean, there's a reason why, you know, it's an adjective as chaos in the American dictionary, Balkanization. You know, it's always been kind of chaotic, a lot of war in those lands in that region. But so you have Albania and then you have Kosovo, which is now an independent nation. They have, you know, both Albania lays claim to Kosovo as its historical land, but you also have other nations that surround it that have the same kind of, they claim their same kind of historical ownership of the land. But not right, but it is majority populated by Albanians, about 92%, and there's about 2 million there. So you have two nations separate, but one people, basically. So today, Albania and Kosovo have great relations with the United States and considers the U.S. to be its biggest ally and supporter. Our local Albanian American community started moving to North Texas in the late 1970s and early 1980s, mostly from New York and East Coast areas. My family moved here in 1983 from New Jersey. Most of us that came here in DFW opened up pizza and pasta restaurants. We were a small community at the time, and most of us prospered with our new businesses. I estimate that there were no more than 1,000 Albanian Americans in DFW back then. Then the word soon began to spread to other Albanian American communities of the success we had with our businesses in North Texas, and many of them made the transition to DFW. So you had communities in Chicago, which has a large Albanian population, Detroit, New York, Connecticut, East Coast areas, Boston. And so when they got wind, oh, you go down to Texas, open a pizza place, you can make money, a lot of them started coming in, you know. So, and there was two other major events in the 1990s that brought an influx of Albanians from Albania proper and from Kosovo. The first one was 1991 when a communist regime fell apart in Albania. So you had a mass exodus of Albanians looking just to seek economic prosperity. A lot of them went to Europe. Many of them came to the United States, many in New York and Chicago. Several of them came to Dallas-Fort Worth area. And so what happened is when they came down here, they got in contact with the community or their cousins or family or friends, and then they started working for Albanian Americans that already owned Italian pasta places and starting off as dishwashers, just like many immigrants do, and working their way through. And now all of them that have came, they've started their own businesses, and they're very successful now as well. And then in the late 1990s, 1999, after the war in Kosovo, I don't know if you all remember, but NATO went and bombed former Yugoslavia, Serbia, to stop the ethnic genocide that was taking place in Kosovo against Albanians by the Serbian army at the time. And so after that war ended, and you had the same thing, a large exodus of Albanians that were refugees already, many of them. And so many of them went into Europe and they came to the United States, and a lot of them found their way to Dallas-Fort Worth. So that was the second, mass influx that we had after a major event in the DFW area of Albanians. And the same story with them as well. They started, washing dishes and made their way up, and now a lot of them own their own businesses. Today we estimate there are 10,000 Albanian Americans living in DFW area. Most of us are in the restaurant business. We believe there are 350 Albanian American restaurants throughout North Texas, the majority of them pizza and pasta. We have 2 community centers in DFW area. We have one in Carrollton off I-35. We have another one in Bedford. And we do a lot of cultural heritage type events out of those. We do an annual big Flag Day, Albanian Flag Day event that we have in November, and usually we get about 800-900 people. And, we open it to the public, too. If you guys ever want to do a circle dance or something, you're more than welcome to come. But we also do, like school for the kids, the Albanian language school, so they can learn their heritage that way. We have a young professionals group that meets. We participate FC Dallas soccer tournament. They have like a World Cup, mini World Cup every year in June, like 16 countries. We won a couple of years ago, took the trophy home. It was about a lot of non-Albanian players, but we just wanted to win. So when you're going up against guys like Brazil, they got so many people here, 10,000, it's nothing compared to that population. But we also have a partner program that we put together through the community center to help all the restaurants kind of aggregate the purchasing power, and so it saves them money. But at the same time, we also get, because we're nonprofit 501c3s, we get great donations like from Coke and from Lazanti Foods, and so our community center is financially stable, and we're doing great actually. And so we're trying to grow that program and trying to get more, like we're working on an Albanian festival. We just started work on, I don't know if you guys heard about that Irish thing, that river dance that they had, a decade ago. So we're trying to mimic something like that, but with Albanian culture, because we do have some cool costumes and music, and we'd like to kind of tour that, And so we're working on that. Maybe Blue Cross Blue Shield might want to look into sponsoring something like that. So let me say it's an honor to represent our local Albanian American community on such an important and meaningful subject. 6 years ago, I was contacted by a wonderful volunteer at the Houston Holocaust Museum. Her name was Ellen Trachtenberg, and her mission was to locate Albanian Americans to participate at the opening reception of the Besa exhibit in Houston. This was the first time I had heard about Albanians saving Jews during World War II, other than from my father. Now, my father is very proud of his Albanian heritage and spoke often of Albanians saving Jews during World War II. I never learned of this during history classes in high school or college. And when my father spoke of it, I just thought it was more bravado than fact. My father's like that character. Have you guys ever seen My Big Fat Greek Wedding? The father in that movie, he's like, all words started in Greece, and Greece invented everything, and so he's very much like that. My dad would tell you fire and the wheel was invented in Albania, But I realized the true historical importance after Ellen contacted me from Houston. And we gathered a group from Dallas, and we met with other Albanian Americans in Houston. We celebrated the reception of the Besa exhibit at the Holocaust Museum. And we enjoyed an unforgettable evening with Albanian and Jewish Americans. We met survivors and listened to stories of the great tragedy they endured. We spoke of the Albanian difficulties under extreme communism and of the humanitarian crisis during the breakup of former Yugoslavia. Jewish survivors were thanking us for what Albanians did for their people during the war. And, we were blown away by their appreciation. It's just, surreal almost. We were sitting there speaking with, elderly couples that had been in camps, during World War II, and they had their tattoos with the serial numbers, and we were talking about the stories. And, we weren't expecting any of this. And, but they looked at the history of Besa, the book, would have talked about how Albanians saved the Jews. And so they were like being very appreciative toward us, which just didn't make sense. I felt like, you guys were the ones that had gone through everything. We're like appreciative, just to be in your presence was an honor, So it was just blew us away. And it was a real proud moment also for our culture, And so, and yet at the same time, we thank them for their support and their outspoken demands that NATO helped to stop the genocide taking place in Kosovo in the late 1990s. I remember prominent Jewish Americans like, I'm going to butcher his name, but Elie Wiesel, a great novelist, professor, political activist, Nobel Prize winner, and Holocaust survivor. I remember him being vocal in trying to solicit President Clinton to help stop Slobodan Milosevic and the Serbian army from the ethnic cleansing taking place in Kosovo. In a June 2nd, 1999 New York Times article, he is quoted as saying, quote, "I've learned something from my experiences as a contemporary of so many events. When evil shows its face, you don't wait. You don't let it gain strength. You must intervene." So that night in Houston 5 years ago was truly an unforgettable event and a very proud moment to proclaim our Albanian heritage and our historical value during World War II. We all felt that the exhibit must be brought to Dallas. Last year, the Dallas Holocaust Museum brought the Besa exhibit and the documentary film to DFW, and the Albanian American Cultural Center partnered with them in welcoming it to our city. Survivors of the Holocaust attended, and we shared another great experience of appreciation between Albanian and Jewish Americans. As Albanian Americans, we owe a debt of gratitude to the author and photographer Norman Gershman. His book, Besa, and subsequent documentary, Besa, the Promise, has brought an extraordinary amount of positive publicity to Albanian culture and history. The historical story of Albanian citizens risking their lives during Nazi occupation to help Jews survive the war under the pretext of Besa needed to be told. I'll touch on the meaning of the word Besa shortly. First, I'd like to talk about the other part of Gershman's book. The complete title of his book is Besa, Muslims Who Saved Jews in World War II. This is the book, and all y'all are welcome to come look at it after we're done with our talk. I find the religious angle of his work to be relevant in today's atmosphere of tolerance and understanding, or lack thereof. In his documentary, Gershman talked about his visit to Yad Vashem in Israel. Yad Vashem is the Jewish people's living memorial to the Holocaust, and it safeguards the memory of the past and imparts its meaning for the future generations. It is the world center for documentation, research, education, and commemoration of the Holocaust. There is a section at Yad Vashem called the Righteous Among the Nations. It is a list of individuals that risked danger to help Jews survive World War II from the Nazis. Gershman noticed Muslim names on the list and was curious to know how Muslims in Europe were able to help Jews from Nazi atrocities. This pursuit of knowledge is what led him to write the book and produce the documentary. Today's world and news coverage is saturated with negative stereotypes of Islam and all things associated with the religion. Many Americans have a negative outlook to Islam and to those who practice the faith. This is another reason that Gershman's book is relevant. It shows a positive side to Islam, and it shows that all humans have compassion for those in need. The book also highlights not all of the Albanians who saved the Jews were Muslim. Many of them were of the Catholic and Christian Orthodox faiths as well. The centerpiece virtue of Gershman's book revolves around Besa. Besa is an Albanian word that has more than one meaning, ranging from faith, unbreakable truth, and truce. It's a word of honor to a sacred promise and obligation to keep one's word to provide hospitality and protection. It involves the concept of complete protection for a guest, even to the point of forfeiting one's own life. It is closely related to honor and justice. It lies at the heart of Albanian culture and at its historic way of governance. Besa is described as the highest authority in the land. A man of Besa connotes a man of respect and honor, someone to whom you can trust your life and family. And, you know, I've seen this growing up in our culture where if you do go to someone's home or you're a stranger and they greet you, they meet you, they do tend to have this overwhelming hospitality towards you. Now, they might not do the same within their family units, you know, but when it comes to strangers, they just overwhelmingly giving. And this holds, in 1934, Herman Bernstein, the United States ambassador to Albania, wrote, "There is no trace of any discrimination against Jews in Albania, because Albania happens to be one of the rare lands in Europe today where religious prejudice and hate do not exist, even though Albanians themselves are divided into three faiths." And this does hold true today, and I'm proud to have a heritage from a country that is an example of tolerance and takes issue to those that try to divide societies by religious tensions. So I'd like to thank all of you for your interest in Albania and the role she played during the Holocaust in World War II. I encourage your committee to continue your work with diversity and communicating its importance in our daily lives. And I would also encourage you to read the book Besa and watch the documentary Besa, The Promise. So again, thank you guys for having me. It's an honor to come and to speak to y'all and to express, you know, everything that's occurred because of this book. And like I said earlier, you know, thanks to Norman Gershman for his work on this subject and this matter. Otherwise, it would still just be something that was overlooked in the history of World War II. And I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Okay, so we asked Doc to take some questions. Does anybody have a question they'd like to put to him about these events? All right, wait for the microphone because we're recording this and we want to make sure everybody can hear the question.
Not so much on most of your speech, but why pizza and pasta?
You know, it's funny because my father, when we first immigrated to New York, so I was born in Germany, and not even a few months after that, my dad always wanted to come to America. He was one of those guys, like, you know, it's kind of like that. You don't hear or feel or see that as much anymore, but everybody always wanted to come to America, you know, and during the Cold War era, John Wayne and Ronald Reagan just had this mystique, you know, and he was always one that had thought, you know, America was the greatest place on the planet. He had to come here. So he came to New York. Most of us came in through New York. Was not even 2 months old, and the first thing, I think it's because we're very similar to Italians in their culture. So when they came to New York, you know, he didn't go to a Chinese restaurant to find work, or he didn't go to, you know, maybe a Spanish restaurant or something, but he went to an Italian, and a lot of Albanians, they know how to speak Italian. My dad does. And so they started working for Italians in New York City in pizza places. And so they learned the business, and then a few of them had come to Dallas in the late 70s, like I'd mentioned before, and they were doing just gangbusters out there. There was no good pizza places in Dallas-Fort Worth at the time, you know, and New York had the best. So, and then it's just the same thing, like you'll see cultural groups, you know, when they hang out with each other, they also, you know, work for each other, and then just kind of domino effect, you know, and that's what had happened, especially when we had those large influxes of big groups that came in and they needed jobs to work. We always had jobs available for them at the restaurants. We're always looking for guys, and then they learned the business, and business is good, and so they all picked it up. And so really, if you go to just about 80% of the pizza pasta places in DFW, they're going to be Albanian owned. The Joe's Pizza, Brothers Pizza, or even some Italian fine dining places all over the place. It's a unique little niche in the market, I guess. So.
I asked that same question to the owner of an Italian restaurant, Richardson, last year, and she gave a very succinct answer. I said, why an Italian restaurant? Why an Albanian restaurant? She said, who's going to come to an Albanian restaurant?
Yeah, I mean, it's not the most popular food, I guess, or well known, but it is pretty good. It's very similar to Greek. If you go to a Greek restaurant, you're eating Albanian food. They got grape leaves, we got lamb, we have feta cheese. Is huge in the diet. So there's a lot of Balkan areas. You have a lot of similarities in cultures and in food, even though they all want to kill each other over there, but the food's similar. Well, I think Venetia is off of I forget what's really. I think there's a Joe's around here.
It's on Aldelia Road. Yeah.
Aldelia. There's one Aldelia. Then he opened up another one in still not Murphy, which is not too far, I think. So
yeah, I thought they were Italians.
Yes, always Albanians, especially if they're yelling and screaming at each other in the kitchen. For sure they're Albanians.
I know my question may be a little moot, but with so many people reading books on tablets and things nowadays, you wouldn't happen to know if that book can be gotten at Barnes & Noble or at the library?
I called the Holocaust Museum in downtown Dallas, where they have a lot of the books down there, but they didn't have any copies of this because I was missing my copy. I had to run over to a friend's house to grab this. I know you can get it on Amazon for sure. I don't think it's well stocked in the local bookstores, though. I think you have to go through an Amazon probably. So
I got my copy at Amazon, and I'll tell you, if you look on the back of your program, you'll see about the events that are going to be at that store this weekend. Bob's going to come and speak at the synagogue. We're going to watch the film. You cannot buy the film. So if you're interested in seeing the film, be there Sunday or be square, because you cannot buy the film. Well, they did once, but
they had copies down there. I would call and ask them and check. I'm sure I could find a copy for you too. I should have one myself, but life gets away. Yeah, I got business cards too with me. If you guys have questions or want me to follow up on some of this stuff, I'll be more than happy to pass those out.
That's sort of lighthearted anecdote.
Sure.
When you said that about Albanians owning Italian restaurants, it reminded me. I knew a very proud young Italian guy who had started his own restaurant. He's working there 18 hours a day. And I mentioned two guys from Italy, and he was like, oh, those guys, they're not Italian even, they're Albanian. And I had no idea what he was talking about.
Yeah.
At the time. Now I do.
Yeah. I think you might find that attitude with Italian pizza and pasta owners, because a lot of our guys do well with the restaurant, so maybe any competition, they're not too happy about usually. When I opened up in McKinney, we upset Brooklyn's Pizza, and he's not Albanian owned, but that happens.
Hi, another subject. Yesterday I looked on a map for Albania in Central Europe, and looked also at, where's Germany, where's Poland, all that, Italy.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't read the book, so I don't know, but I was wondering how...
Did they get there?
Yes, and was it, how organized was it, or was it small groups, or what?
Yeah, they say that before, what you'll hear in the book mentions it, before the war started, there was 200 Jewish Albanians that lived in Albania, so they did have a small population. When the war ended, there was 2,000, or 1,800. The numbers are not perfect, but the mode of transport I'm not sure about. I would think maybe through Italy, because now Italy, if you cross the Adriatic Sea, I should have probably brought a slide of this, but it's 50 miles from Italy across the Adriatic Sea, and you have boats going back and forth quite often between the two countries. So I would imagine that was one way. And then I wouldn't have thought, because at the time Yugoslavia was a country, And I don't think they would have come in through Yugoslavia because there was total chaos there, and there was a lot of German occupation during. It was one of the first places, I believe, in World War II that Germany occupied. So I don't think they would have came in that route. But I would imagine through Italy, more across the Adriatic into Albania, they would have found their way that way. Yeah.
All right. So I know part of this answer. What happened was at that time Albania was a kingdom, had a king, and when the Germans demanded that the Albanian authorities and the police turn over the Jews to the Germans for deportation, he not only refused that, he gave orders to all of his soldiers and to his border guards to allow anybody Jewish who managed to get to the border to let them in. And word of that spread to places like Yugoslavia and Greece. It's a very mountainous area, and some people were able to get through the mountains and make their way properly on foot to Albania.
That makes sense because, there was larger populations in those countries, and it would have probably been, that's probably where most of them had come from. The other thing I forgot to mention, if you ever go to the Holocaust Museum in Houston, they have a huge map of Europe. I mean, it's got to extend from that side of the TV probably to the other end of that TV. It's a huge map of Europe. And every country, you see these numbers, 20,000, 100,000, 17,000. Every single country in Europe, they got all these numbers. And we asked, what are these numbers? And that's how many Jews were sent to the Holocaust or to the camps and died from those countries. And then when you see Albania, there's absolutely no numbers on there. It's zero, And so there's no, I think, historical evidence of any of them being sent from the.
I think that's correct.
Right.
There were, however, I should say I met a young man who lives in Houston a couple of years ago. I mean, that's how I first became aware of the story. One of the things that happens when you wear a yarmulke on your head is people say all kinds of things to you. And on this occasion, I was at an international event, and as I walked innocently by a table of Albanians, one of them shouted out, "Are you Jewish?" I wasn't sure whether I wanted to say yes or no. And so I said yes, and they said, "Come here, we want to show you something." And they brought this book out. And about the same time, he uttered something in Albanian to a friend who disappeared. And he says, "Don't go away. Wait here. I want you to meet somebody." And in a minute, they came back with a young man, about my son's age, about 25-ish. And they said, his grandfather was sent to Auschwitz because he was hiding a family. Okay, we've been promising Christy she could. When I see you over there, I haven't forgotten.
So I understand, there's this concept of Besa where you vow to protect your guest, even if it means laying down your own life. But, there's a lot of people throughout the world that talk about, how valuable life is. So when push comes to shove, they'll protect their own or they'll protect certain people, but, they'll only go so far. But there's these pockets of humanity, like in Albania, there were certain parts of France who really did lay down their lives to protect people who were very different from them. Does the book and the film explore what it was about these particular groups of people that really made them take it that seriously and allowed them to, assume that risk and go that far to protect somebody else?
Yeah, the movie talks about it a bit. They interview the families that did it, and they speak to them about it. And really, it was just a way of, they don't know any different. Really, it's odd, it's not odd, it's a great thing, but it's, and when after the communism fell in 91 and all the evidence was starting to become revealed about what had actually happened, and then the folks over at Yad Vashem in Israel started to investigate, because they're always trying to find out who these people that helped, the Jews were. And they started interviewing these guys in Albania, and they're like, "What do you want? Why are you here? We don't get it." Well, they're like, "No, you don't understand. This was a big deal for us." And they said, "Okay, well, it's." And then Norman was showing up with his camera, taking pictures of them, and they were like, they didn't understand the concept, just because it's just normal way of life. And like I said, there's no society is perfect. Every society has its ups and downs, and there's a lot of things wrong in Albania. But this is one thing that I'm proud about, about our heritage, and I've seen it growing up. They just really they want to help people they don't know or strangers, and I'm not sure what the scientific facts are in history that made that become reality today. I'd really like to investigate that a little deeper and maybe see. And I think there's other societies as well around the world that have similar type of attributes too. I was reading one, it was in Pakistan or somewhere, I don't remember where it was, story the other day about, how being very kind and noble to strangers and how it was a big part of their culture. I don't remember. I saw this story somewhere in the internet. Is it Pakistan? Yeah, that's what I thought, yeah. 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 Yeah, I don't know if it's to our detriment or not, but that's just the way it is, So, yeah, it's funny because I was reading about it the other day. It was on the internet somewhere, I forget.
Well, question for the group or anyone here. I had heard, and you had mentioned when you were in Houston, you met some survivors.
Yes.
I was there not too long ago and did the same. It's very moving.
It is.
But I had heard, and I had friends here in Dallas that were part of a project that Steven Spielberg was documenting, and I think the project started about 10 years ago, documenting the stories of survivors. Does anyone know what the outcome of that project was? Have you seen, heard?
Yeah, it's actually through USB out of London. It's the Shoah.
Yeah, the Shoah project.
Yeah, the Shoah project. Out of USC, it's still ongoing, and they're trying to do as many interviews as they can and to virtualize as much of that as they can, because since everyone is growing older and passing away, trying to record as much of that so it's not lost to history. And that, from what I understand, it's still ongoing. And I don't know if they've reached out to any of the people from Albania to record their stories about what happened there, because I think that would be a great thing to include as to, but yeah.
I don't know either, but the author of this book, that's precisely what the book is he located people. He's a portrait photographer. He did portraits of them, but then he tells their story, and so it's just one story after another. I think, as I recall, the numbers were something like there was somewhere in the range of 92 Muslims who were awarded righteous among the nations.
I think it was 72. I was on the website. You go to Yad Vashem and look at their website, Righteous Among the Nations, and they'll have a list of every country and how many in their names. They got them all documented. It was 72, though, yeah.
And what I remember is all except 2 or 3 were Albanians. Okay. I know there was you've been waiting. I'll bring.
Oh, I was asking, what was the ramification? You might know, I guess. I don't know who knows, for the king to say, sorry, Hitler, not working for us.
I'm not 100% sure on that. I'm trying to think, because the king was ousted. I can't remember if it was during the war or right after, when the communists took over, and he went to Switzerland. And but I know that he was alive still, and he wasn't killed. But he might have, I'd have to research that and get back to you on it, because I'm not really sure about that. There's some stories in the book, too, where they talk about, there was one I was reading about last night, where one Albanian guy saw that there was some Nazis had a Jewish prisoner in the truck, or I think it was a young person, and so he brought him into the restaurant, the German soldiers, and he got them drunk. And then he gave the boy something to eat. He slipped a note in there, go to the woods in this section, we'll have somebody pick you up. And so in the story, what it said was that he escaped, and then when the Germans came out and they saw he was gone, they took the shop owner, and they put him up against the wall and threatened to shoot him several times and make him tell, but he never did. And so they just, left frustrated, and so he, risked his life that way. So I don't know how many of those type of stories are out there, but, they're there and they've been documented. So it's something, I don't know how many of us would be able to do something like that, but, it's back home in Albania, it's a mountainous country too, so you have a lot of, and they've been in feuds and they've been, occupied by several empires over, thousands of years, and so they've gotten used to, kind of a rough existence and life, and so maybe for them, us here in the U.S., we get upset if they cook our steaks a little bit too much or something, but these guys, to be thrown up against the wall and threatened to be shot, maybe they have a little bit more endurance in that area. So,
I have a question, but just as a side note, since we're talking about Holocaust survivors, we recently had one come to a concert. I'm a member of a choir called the Dallas Millennial Choir and Orchestra, and we were doing a 3-movement song, all in Hebrew, called Chichester Song. And this 95-year-old Holocaust survivor we found out about from McKinney was able to attend our concert, and he was just an awesome little man. And his name, so ironically, was Adolf. I can't remember his last name, but anyway, someone did ask him if his story has been documented, and it hadn't. And he was still very alert and able to tell his story. So someone from our choir did volunteer to write his story for him. So I'm hoping that's progress. But anyway, you just never know when those opportunities arise. What is the exact name of the author of the book?
Norman H. Gershman.
How do you spell that?
Gershman.
Okay. And my question was really, I have a degree in anthropology, so I'm always wondering, so do you feel like that the Albanian response to this was more cultural or religious or kind of a combo, or what do you feel like is the driving force there?
Right, yeah, now there was 3 religions in Albania, and all 3 went out of their way to help, Jews survive the war. So I guess it wouldn't be as much religious as it would be cultural, I think. That when we speak about Besa, one part I left out was there's this, it's called, there's a book that was written, centuries ago. They call it Kanun, K-E-N-U-A-N. Now, a lot of the writings in there are for how to govern within a society at the time that was just constantly overrun by other empires, and they're mountainous people, harsh way of life. So they had some pretty harsh, laws and rules regarding, marriages, property transfers, just some type of civil type of constitution, basically. So a lot of the cultural part, especially of Besa, comes from those right now. If you were to open that book and read it, you'd probably be horrified by some of the rules they got in there, but especially when it comes to marriage. But one of the things that came out of there that had stuck for a long time was the notion of Besa and how to treat a stranger that comes to your home. I was reading a little bit about it. All you need to do is ask for their gun, and they should give it to you. If they don't, then they're not welcome, basically. But if they give you their gun, then they should have free reign to your home, and you should wash their feet and give them all your food, and this and that. So, but that's where that, I think, starts and comes from. And the other thing about the Kanun that a lot of Albanians treasure is the fact that it helps to keep their Albanian society pure, not pure in a sense in a negative way, but it didn't, when they were overrun by the Ottoman Empire or by the Byzantine, they still kept their identity. And a lot of it was because they kept those rules and those laws. As the Turkish Empire would try to make them submit and become part of their citizenry, they would still keep that separate kind of Albanianism because of that. But no matter what religions came in or out, you know, we used to be all Catholic, and the Byzantines came in, and a lot of them became Christian Orthodox, and then the Ottomans came in, a lot of them became Muslims, you know. But no matter what religions they chose, they still kept. Albania is like, if you meet a lot of Albanians, they're always like Albania, you know, religion, second, or whatever. You know, that's the attitude you'll find a lot over there. So even though we love our religions and we respect it, and that's the other great thing about Albania that you'll read, the Catholics and the Christian Orthodox and the Muslims over there, they always get along very well. They intermarry constantly, and there's no friction that you see in a lot of other parts of the world. So it's really something, you know, we're proud of.
Okay, so all right, so I already told you about the events Saturday and Sunday. If any of y'all are interested in this, you're welcome to just show up. On Saturday evening, it's late. It doesn't start until after nightfall. So it's like 9 p.m. You don't overlook that. It's not 9 a.m., it's 9 p.m., although you're welcome to be there at 9 a.m. also. We start this event by lighting some memorial candles in honor of 11 million people that were murdered in the Holocaust. And somebody in the room is thinking, wait a minute, I thought the number was 6 million. There were 6 million Jews, but also 5 million non-Jews. We recognize all of that. And there'll be some Beth Flora people there, and there will be some leaders of the broader community. I know I've been pretty successful over the years recruiting Christian pastors. I'm still looking for, my gold ring is to convince an imam to come participate, which I haven't.
I'll help you out with that.
Yes, so if you can help me out. I'm not sure they trust me yet, but we're working on it. Saturday morning, the Voices of Diversity are going to sing. That'll be about, well, the film's going to be at 9:30. The singing will be about 11:30. Sunday morning. Thank you. Let's be clear about which day. Now, what the event actually is reading names. We have long lists of names that we got from Yad Vashem, and the main event is just reading the names of people who died. And that sounds simple, but it touches you in a way you cannot imagine. You can say something.
I was going to say, our Alliance will be there at 4:30 Saturday night to read names of the homosexual victims.
That's right. So for a number of years now, Christy and Dell have been coming. You have no idea how difficult it was to find the names of homosexuals who were persecuted and murdered in the Holocaust, but we did it. And we're also going to read some of those names. We do that every year. And then we also have reserved a block of time on Sunday afternoon starting at 1 p.m., 1 hour for Blue Cross, Blue Shield employees to read names. If anyone's interested, you could come and listen or you can come and read. We've made that arrangement ahead of time. And now we have a short presentation for our speaker. Bring the gift, bring the certificate.
Thank you so much for speaking for us.
That's good. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you very much. You're great.
That concludes our program. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, guys. I think we were going to get a car or something.